and then 2 pages of root text, and then the root text, he himself writes an explanation for the root text. This is in a way you could say, a condensed version of what his teacher wrote. His primary teacher being Gampopa. And of course, Gampopa's famous jewel ornament of liberation is also the kind of writing very similar to this one, except that the jewel ornament of liberation is much more extensive, has 21 chapters. For example, giving, one chapter each to each of the 6 paramitas. And in Pamodrupa's case, it's a very condensed version. And we also don't know, at least no indication in this text itself, whether he saw this text as a condensation of his teacher's work or not. It's unclear. So here, I think we started, yeah? Did we start on page 4 last time? Or not?
No, we
Not
went
yet,
through
right?
yeah, not yet. That's where you said we would begin today.
Right. Yeah, so I think we looked at the invocation at the opening, and then the promise to compose, and then we read through the root verses. Yeah. So now I'm going to read through the root verses, so that we at least refresh our minds and have a sense of what's in here. So on page 2 it says, the faithful person of awakened karmic lot is taught to venerate a qualified Lama on the crown of one's head. Meditate on the difficult to find leisures and endowments and on death. Through this, the mind turns away from this world. Contemplate the disadvantages of cyclic wandering through the 3 realms. Then, through this, the mind turns away from cyclic existence, and the intention to achieve liberation is born. Contemplate who is able to provide refuge from this cyclic existence, and so on. And so, generate trust in the 3 jewels. Wheel-wielding Emperor, Indra, Brahma, and the like are unable to provide that refuge. Only the 3 jewels are able to provide it. If I were to, I would move this a little, and say, who is able to provide refuge from this cyclic existence? And then go to wheel-wielding Emperor, Indra, Brahma, and the like are unable to provide that refuge. Only the 3 jewels are able to provide it. And so generate trust in the 3 jewels. Then take the vow of going for refuge. The practice of this. Yeah, that's a and the practice of this, meditate on cause and result, because cyclic existence and nirvana are not without causes and did not arise from discordant causes. Develop trust in karma and result, and so maintain both the purification of previously generated negative karma obscurations and the restraint of no longer generating them. Take a vow of individual liberation. The practice of this is to protect the vow of individual liberation, but not practiced by striving solely for self-benefit, because this does not obtain the element the elemental past enlightenment. A little awkward there, that translation. Because this does not obtain the elemental past enlightenment. That's, please note, that's like a technical term there, elemental past enlightenment. But instead, the state of rest nirvana of the hero or solitary realizer, whose paths were taught in profound sutra to be of provisional meaning. And so here, briefly, state of rest nirvana is contrasted with elemental past enlightenment. And so what we should strive for is this elemental past enlightenment. Whatever that means. When we get there, we'll learn more. And so this enlightenment, this nirvana, is contrasted with state of rest nirvana. Meaning the hearers and the solitary realizers, when they achieve nirvana, the nirvana they achieve is a mere state of rest, and not the complete going beyond of suffering, which is the elemental past enlightenment. Okay, then continuing on page 3 in the PDF text, strive for unsurpassed enlightenment for the benefit of others, and so meditate on loving kindness and compassion, because the state of the omniscient one, the state of being of the omniscient one, the bountiful result of dual benefit, arises from the bodhicitta cause, which is completed by a method rooted in compassion. Arouse effective loving kindness and compassion. Through this, the mindset of working for self-benefit is abandoned, and the mindset of accomplishing enlightenment for the benefit of others is born. Then take the bodhisattva vow, the practice of this. Train respectfully in the precepts of the 3 trainings. Meditate on inseparable emptiness compassion, the training in samadhi and discriminative awareness. Through this, the mind turns away from holder and held. Perfect the meditation on emptiness compassion, purify the faults of wrongdoing, and attain the 3 kayas. So these verses, they're not, necessarily intended to be poetic. So they're not necessarily intended to be poetic, although I'm not saying that they're not, because I don't know enough of the Tibetan to be able to judge. But more so, these lines are almost like, you could say, pithy lines that are easy to memorize. Yeah. I mean, some Dharma texts carry some really lyrical, poetic words. But then some would say, but actually don't have much meaning. Beautiful lyrical words. And then some, will just have, plain words straight to the point, and it's meant for a way to encode a lot of information. So these verses, these lines here are more of that kind. And they are, as you are noticing, it's very dense. So it's like a coded, encoded in these lines are a lot of details. Now, I would like to read the alternative translation to see if it is a little smoother. So those of you who don't have that, you just have to listen. If you have that, and the book is in the 2nd volume, the thicker of the 2 volumes, the volume with the original Tibetan provided at the end, and it's on page 9 of that volume. It says, persons person endowed with faith, whose positive karmic imprints have awakened, venerate the fully qualified Lama on the crown of your head. And vision, I think, is unnecessary. Just venerate the fully qualified Lama on the crown of your head. Meditate on the difficulty of obtaining the freedoms and favorable conditions and on death. Through this, the mind will turn away from its preoccupation with the worldly endeavors of this life. Contemplate the shortcomings of the three realms of samsara. Through this, the mind will turn away from samsaric pursuits, and the wish to attain complete liberation will arise. Not sure why complete is in there, so that may or may not. Contemplate who has the power to protect from samsara. Neither the universal emperor, nor Indra, Brahma, or the like can protect. Only the three jewels can. Thinking like that, develop a firm conviction of trust and take the refuge vows, the practice associated with that. Samsara and nirvana are not without a cause and do not arise from non-accordant. I think in English we call it discordant. And discordant causes. So reflect on cause and result. Having acquired confidence in cause and result, purify the obscurations of former negative actions and keep the promise not to commit them henceforth. Take the pratimoksha vows, the practice associated with this. Keeping the precepts of the pratimoksha vows, if you strive solely for your own benefit, you cannot attain supreme enlightenment. For the nirvana of the Shravakas and Pacceka Buddhas is just a resting place. I would add, you cannot attain supreme enlightenment for or because the nirvana of the Shravakas and Pacceka Buddhas is just a resting place. A provisional teaching, a provisional meaning, and therefore a profound sutra says, so for the benefit of others, strive for supreme enlightenment. So instead of that awkward, what was it again? Well, awkward to me. I don't know if it's awkward to you. The elemental past enlightenment. Here he just translates as supreme enlightenment. Omniscient Buddhahood, fulfillment of the two aims endowed with supreme qualities, will come about through the cause, which is bodhicitta, and by fully perfecting compassion, the basis of bodhicitta. Therefore, meditate on love and compassion. When love and compassion become effective, the mind will turn away from working for one's own benefit only, and develop the attitude of striving for enlightenment for the benefit of others. Take the bodhisattva vow, the practice associated with that. With devotion, apply yourself to the three trainings. Of these, the practice of meditative absorption and discriminating awareness is to meditate emptiness and compassion in inseparable union. Through this, the mind is turned away from holder and held. By perfectly accomplishing the meditation of emptiness and compassion, all faults will be removed and the three kayas attained. Maybe a little smoother, the second translation. Let me look at one thing real quick. Okay. So positive karmic imprints in this second translation, or in the PDF one, the faithful person of awakened karmic lot, right? Here, awaken is not. It's not the word that sometimes is translated as enlightened. Here, awaken simply means like ripen. So those with good karma, positive karmic imprints that have now come to maturation, come to fruition. So persons endowed with faith, how are we endowed with faith? It doesn't come without reasons, without causes. And the cause is the ripening, the coming into maturation of our karmic causes. So then they are now ripening. So those are the root texts. And anything to say, any of you? Knowing that we're going to go through that.
Well, in the book, on the root verses, that part where you have elemental past, it just says unsurpassed enlightenment. Is that any better? Unsurpassed.
Yeah. Basically, supreme is the other translation. Supreme enlightenment. So let's see. Yeah. So the book actually is again different from the PDF. So PDF was probably an earlier version by the same translator. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the elemental, when we get to the actual Tibetan, I will take a look and see what it is that they have rendered it. Sometimes, translators, there's tremendous emphasis in general, I think, and it's a good thing. There's a tremendous emphasis in translators being accurate, And so, especially beginning translators, and for good reason, I think they should, will err on the side of being too literal in the translation, rather than, too loosey goosey with the translation. Yeah. Yeah. So the book, the first volume has it as unsurpassed enlightenment. What we have, I'm pretty sure now, this is probably the transcript. This is probably a version, an earlier draft of what became then volume 1. Yeah, so we begin today by looking at so this first line, right? The faithful person of matured karmic lot. So there becomes chapter 1 in the auto commentary. So in the auto commentary, it says, I pay homage, and through my respectful 3 doors, I pay homage through my respectful 3 doors to the Lama, to the Idam, and to the 3 jewels. So this is, again, Pomodrupa. So the three doors are the body, speech, and mind. Through these three doors, suffering come, and through these three doors, suffering is created. Likewise, through these three doors, happiness arrives, and through these three doors, happiness is, sent away. But here, so when it says through my three doors, that means my entire being, my entire person, and the three dimensions of who we are. We have a physical dimension, we have a verbal dimension, and we have a mental, emotional dimension. So we pay homage with body, speech, and mind to the Guru, to the Yidam, the meditative deity, the Buddha principle that we identify with. This speaks to Vajrayana practice, whereby the deity yoga practice is highlighted, and to the three jewels, then the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So what is the meaning of awakened karmic lot in Faithful Person of Awakened Karmic Lot? People who in former lives collect the accumulations and make completely pure aspiration prayers, attain this body, this existence, endowed with leisure, this existence that has leisure and endowment for this life, and effortlessly meet with positive conditions. So awakened karmic lot, right, is talking about all the merit that we have, the merit that we have accumulated in previous lives, and through that, and then through the pure aspiration prayers, we have now been born in a way that we become the perfect vessel for the Dharma. So all of us, if you're listening to this, even if you don't know the exact, definition of leisure and endowments, leisure is the 8 leisures or the 8 freedoms, freedom from 8 states of being that completely make Dharma practice impossible. The endowments refer to the 10 endowments, 5 that are personal in nature, meaning pertaining to you personally, and 5 speaks to the environment that you are born in. And then again, if you're attending this class, if you are reading this, that means the 10 endowments are there. But these days, if you want, you just Google or maybe Chat GPT, and they'll tell you what the leisures and endowments are in great detail. So this reflection, on on having this kind of body, literally, and less literally on the great opportunity of having this life, not just this human life, but this human life whereby you have interest in Dharma, where you are practicing Dharma, where your Dharma practice, can help you navigate through the confusions of samsara. Often we get distracted by things that are going on with us, around us, and we get distracted to the point of worrying about, complaining about, feeling bad about how things are not perfect. So we are wanting things to be perfect. Here it's saying, when you want things to be perfect in those things that are meaningless, then you are completely wasting your time. Now, to say that the Dharma is the only thing that should be meaningful, you should not take this statement as a general prescription, much less take this statement as a way to measure self-worth, okay? That you do not find yourself necessarily thinking, the ability to practice Dharma, the interest in practicing Dharma, the circumstances in practicing Dharma, is what I feel to be the most important thing in my life. That you don't feel that way, okay? If you find that that's your case, that says nothing about your self-worth, okay? So don't misapply the Dharma. That is just simply saying to us, I'm not there yet, should I want to get there? Well, entirely up to you. On what basis should you want to get there? It cannot be because someone else says it's good. It cannot be because, my Dharma friends will think highly of me. It cannot be that, then my teacher will think I'm a better Dharma practitioner. Or even, it cannot even be so that the Buddha, if I ran into him on the street, will say, oh, good boy, will be proud of me. There's nothing to do with that. When we say, don't, get distracted by meaningless things, and then you hear that, right? Then you think, I do that. I must be a bad Buddhist. There are no good or bad Buddhists, That's just, how much am I able to practice? How much of this makes sense at where I am? And, how can I grow? And again, even grow, right? It cannot be growing for the sake of growth. That's it, But the desire to grow, in other words, to evolve, to advance, based on clear understanding. Clear understanding has to come from seeing firsthand, the unreliable nature of samsara. The unreliable nature of cyclic existence, confused existence. And then, it comes from asking that question, what is the end point? What is the end point here, I think it's fair to say if, somebody like, if we get woken up in the middle of the night, and you don't have a chance yet to think about it, to try to articulate something smart or whatever, and somebody wakes you up in the middle of the night and say, I can give you 20 more years. I can extend your life by 20 more than how long it should be. Do you want it or not? I think if we could actually hear what they're saying, our gut answer, I think all of us would be yes. Because we cannot imagine, like not being alive. I cannot imagine not being alive. But then here, I think the more important question then, once okay, that's probably the answer I'm going to give, then I think the next question we should ask, or I would ask, is, and for what? And for what? Are there more things I need to see? Are there more things I need to hear? Are there more things I need to taste? Oh, that's a hard one, right? Are there more things I need to taste? Are there more things I need to touch? Are there more things I need to think of? Right? What's the end point? Do I have to see more grandkids being happy? Even that. And then what? Right? What's the end point? That we have to ask, I'm not going to force you to accept any answers except to say, ask this, ask this. And let it be a skillful way to help us develop more and more clarity about what is this about? Yeah? If it is about anything, what is this about? And where do I go? Where do I want to go with this? Is it just that I have reached this point, doesn't matter whether you're 30 or 98, to say, oh, well, because so much of my life I have identified with this identity, I have friends who identify with this, and so I'm just going along. It could be that, Again, if it is that, honestly look at it and say, well, it is that, but did I intend it to be that? No, actually, I had different aspirations when I started, but somewhere along the way, it just became that. That's very good. That's very good already, to even be alert or aware of the fact, like, yes, So developing, clarity about this. They all go towards, and these are the accumulations that we're talking about, right? And the aspiration prayers. That means aspiration prayers is talking about, like what are we saying that we're dedicating, our lives to? And then less glorious way, what do I think this end point is about? What's the underlying point here? That's what we mean by aspiration prayers. Sometimes we get carried away by chanting this, repeating that, But these aspiration prayers, the content of these aspiration prayers is to articulate what I call the end point. Like, what is this about? Well, unlike theistic religion, where this world has a purpose, meaning like some greater being created this for a purpose, and therefore then creatures' job is to discover this purpose and live this purpose as best as they can, right? The Buddha Dharma's understanding of what this is doesn't play. It's not framed that way. We don't think of it as, God or goddess or the universe has a purpose and my job is to figure out. It's a little bit less, I would argue, stressful. You don't have to worry about, am I doing enough to please, mom or dad? Whether you prefer your God or goddess. But the Dharma says, you look and see, you look carefully and see, and see if you are able to discern clearly what is meaningful to orientate my life towards. What is meaningful to orientate not just my life, even my death? What is meaningful to orientate my life and death towards? So that then, dead or alive, life or death, living or dying, all becomes, all is kind of not necessarily become yet, maybe at the beginning it's more like all becomes framed in terms of the realization or the fulfillment of the meaning that I have decided, like, yes, this is meaningful. And of course, here in the Mahayana tradition, we said the best of meanings is bodhicitta. Bodhicitta, both in its relative and ultimate aspects, that is the best of meanings. And that is what makes it meaningful. And that is what I want to dedicate both my life and my death and everything in between towards. We all, I would say, at some point have felt this way. Except that those feelings, for most of us, rather unstable. Some of us may be able to count, if our memory is still that good, with one or two hands, experiences in the past that you have felt this way. But also then later remembering how, and it peters out. 2 weeks after a retreat, or it's like back to business as usual, right? Anyway, coming back here, these faithful person of matured karmic lot, karmic lot that is like maturing now. It's like your CD, is maturing now. So then you can go cash it out. After effortlessly arriving at the condition of being a good person, here it says, and now has attained a precious human body. So maybe this other translation is a little less, has less baggage, After arriving at the condition of being a good person, that again, in the realm of religion, for some of us, there might be some baggage there. So see, how much of your previous baggage you are still carrying, and how much of it is not needed, in this understanding of what the problem is and what the solution is. After effortlessly arriving at the condition of having these leisures and endowments, so that's essentially what it means. Their previously generated karmic lot. So these previous CDs that you have put in, are now maturing, and they are being matured. They're coming into maturity because of having seen representations of the three jewels, having seen Buddha images, having come across a Dharma book, or having seen a practitioner or a monk or a nun, that we become inspired, or hearing the Dharma or other such similar things. So this is saying, so those of us, in brief, all of us who have, for whatever reason, when we connected with any Buddhist things as quote unquote superficial as, seeing a Buddha image, a Buddha statue, and there's some kind of recognition, even when you were young, and even if you were young at a time where there was so little exposure to Buddhism, I've heard many stories from many of you, not just those of you in your 30s or 20s or 50s, but those of you who are in your 80s and 70s. I hear across all age group how growing up in a very small town somewhere in the US, whether you chance upon, walking by a shop, or an aunt or an uncle had a Buddha statue or gave you one, that kind of spark things. So here is saying it's not random. From the perspective of Dharma, this is the ripening of a lot of positive karmic seeds that are now sprouting. Now, these 8 leisures and 10 endowments, sometimes this has been explained as they are the physical positive conditions that we have obtained, that we have arrived at. Yeah, so to be free from the 8 conditions is basically like physically, you're not born in the hell realm, you're not born in the realm of hungry ghosts, you're not born in the realm of animals. Yeah, so sometimes it's been clearly kind of pointed out and say the leisures and endowments issue refer more to the physical fact, whereas faithful persons and faith, so this faithful refers more to inner mental qualities we need to have. So continuing, it says, what is the meaning of faithful? Or concerning endowed with faith. So through the ripening, maturing of positive karmic causes, then the 3 types of faith are born. The following 3 types of faith are produced. The first one is what's here translated as longing faith, then clear faith, and then trusting faith. Longing faith, clear faith, and trusting faith. What one translation calls clear faith, the other translation calls it faith based on admiration. Admiration. Longing faith. After one understands cyclic existence to have a nature of suffering, one longs to abandon suffering and the causes of suffering, and one longs to be liberated from cyclic existence and to attain liberation. So this is the longing that we're talking about. Yeah, so this longing faith is not, longing for a new job, longing for an old boyfriend, longing for, that's not, yeah. So this quality of faith called longing faith is a specific type of longing, which is the longing to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. So this kind of faith, is informed with an understanding of how things are. So one of the main understandings about how things are in this context is understanding the suffering nature. Understanding the suffering nature of things. And understanding that, seeing that, knowing that, then longing to be free from that. The second type of faith So whereas the first type of faith, in some ways you could say, right, what makes it longing faith is dependent on the subject, the person having that faith, that comes in the form of longing, right, to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. The next kind of faith, which here translated as clear faith, or faith based on admiration. Faith based on admiration or clear faith. Here, what distinguishes this kind of faith has more to do with the object of faith rather than the subject. So with regards to the object, which is knowing, seeing the good qualities of the three jewels, the qualities of that are possessed by the three jewels, seeing those qualities, and then liking and admiring those good qualities. So the first type of faith is more to do with seeing the unsatisfactory nature of confused existence. One is repulsed, you could say that, repulsed by confused existence, therefore. The second type of faith has more to do with how one is attracted to, the opposite of that. And the opposite of confused existence is the existence as a Buddha, right? And seeing the virtues of Buddha and admiring those qualities, admiring the freedom that Buddhas possess, admiring the love and compassion that Buddhas possess. So then that's to have the second type of faith. The third faith is called trusting faith. So here, again, this faith has a specific content to it. And so trust in what? Here the emphasis is trusting in cause and effect. And so it says in this translation, after one comes to trust karmic causality, one does not contravene dharma through attachment, aversion, ignorance, or fear. It was said, quoting a text, quoting a sutra, one who does not give up dharma due to desire, hatred, fear, or ignorance is called faithful. Yeah, so these three types of faith, the first one, again, to summarize, is the longing to be free, what we would call. Seeing that we're not free, we long to be free. That is a type of faith. Second one, seeing the good qualities of the three jewels, you admire those qualities. That's another kind of faith. And the third type of faith is called trusting faith, but not here, not even like, oh, you should trust the Buddha. Oh, you should trust the Sangha, which of course you should. But here, more specifically, Pamudrupa identify trusting the inevitable nature of cause and effect, trusting the unmistaken nature of cause and effect is the third type of faith that we need to have. Questions?
Where in the text was the reference to the three faiths?
You mean the PDF we have?
Yes.
The big
Oh.
book.
Page 4. I'm just reading from page 4.
In the book, it's 15.
Yeah, if you have the physical book, it's page 15, and the PDF is page 4.
Oh, yes, I see them. Thank you.
Yeah, that's where we are now. I'm just reading, and then from time to time I read the other two. I mean the other translation, but otherwise I'm just reading from the where the PDF is. Let me look for something, but we can pause and see if you have questions, comments.
Well, I do. I'm thinking of this teaching on the three types of faith. It makes me think of the difference between faith and belief,
Mm-hmm.
because I remember that the Buddha said, "Don't believe everything I say. Like, don't believe what I say." You have to test it out,
Mm-hmm.
see for yourself.
Yes.
So I think that, it's really lovely to hear faith categorized this way, and to just contemplate those three types.
Yes.
But also to remember that it's different from belief.
Yeah, it's a different way of definitely, like from the way we use the expression faith. This word faith is also translated as like trust. It's like the Sanskrit is shraddha. In Tibetan is deba. Deba. Which, by the way, for as a footnote, is different from what in the Mahamudra material is called like devotion. That is mogu. Slightly different range of meanings in devotion or mogu. Here is depa, and these three types of faith. Yeah, so this articulation of faith is a little different from, definitely different from theistic traditions and faith emphasized there. I'm not saying that there are no overlap. They're probably somewhere there. And I would say more sophisticated writings on faith in those theistic traditions may explore some of what we're talking about here.
Is this similar to the four meditations that you turn toward the Dharma? That's kind of what it looks like.
Not yet. Here is still, it's beginning with faith. The four thoughts that turn the mind is in this first part.
Okay.
So like the third line, it says, meditate on the difficult to find leisure and endowments and on death. So it will come later. Now it's just talking about what does an individual need, as in like the most ideal, right? The most ideal condition that one could have as a Dharma practitioner, in other words, is someone who has these three types of faith. And then you say, well, I don't have. Okay, start there. Start at least with an understanding that faithful means these three interrelated ideas and don't mean other things. Yeah, so this is helpful. Yeah, in that sense, as Melissa you said, this is helpful in that it will help us not misunderstand what it means. You know, that when it says you need to be a faithful person, right? So here, right, there's no connotation of like a state of mystery, you know, which that can be very powerful. I mean, if that resonates with you, right? Like in the absence of evidence, in the absence of understanding, somehow you are able and willing to just be open to the mystery, right? There's something very powerful about that for sure, but not required here. You know, that's all it's saying, right? It's not saying you should not have that kind of faith. Yeah, if you want, you can, but not required here, according to this text. For you to start Dharma practice, if you have some form of some of these three, and better yet, all three, you have what it takes. Yeah, basically, this discussion here about persons and faith is to say, do I have what it takes to practice Dharma? So here, not required, suspending disbelief. Somewhere along the way, can that be a useful temporary state? Which means another way to put it is to withhold your judgment about something you don't understand. Yeah, maybe it will be useful, maybe not, who knows? But again, you know, insofar as continuing on to the next part, what is needed? Well, these three types of faith. Longing to be free from confusion and its causes, right? Being clear about the qualities of the three jewels, what they represent, and why they are attractive to you, why you admire them, and then trusting faith, trusting in cause and effect. Not to say, sorry.
I'm having a little bit trouble with the word contravene Dharma there, that phrase. I'm not sure what that exactly means. I mean, I know it understands you have to really have faith in cause and effect.
Let me look for that. Contravene.
Dharma, under trusting faith.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure what that means, that you
That
don't.
means you don't act.
Okay,
You don't act in ways that are against, you know, this principle of cause and effect. And and of course there are many ways, you know, contravene as in like contrary to. So the most basic contrary to is out of attachment, aversion, and ignorance or fear. Here, ignorance is not just a passive state of not knowing. It's like knowing wrongly. So what it's talking about here then is, you know, right? You are not like engaging in non-virtue without any understanding at all that it is non-virtue. Yeah, before you asked this question or raised this point, I was going to say, now, we are far from saying that these three types of faith come easily either. So one part of this is, yay, this is not like evangelical Christian faith, which I'm not capable of having. Well, that's good to know. That's liberating. But to get these three faiths established, also not so easy.
It sounds like the third one, the trusting faith comes to look at your behavior, not just what you're thinking and feeling and knowing.
Yeah, trust karmic causality and acting in that way. Now, of course, the caveat is, of course, until you are Buddha, your actions will not completely be Buddha-like. But here, there's some emphasis on thinking or thought, as in, like, at the very least, you need to know. Actually, right now, this action is going to bring some suffering. And not like blindly do something, right? And turn it upside down and say, well, actually, this is a good thing that I'm doing. So it has something to do with knowledge that arises, and to call this relationship that we should have with the teaching on cause and effect, trusting faith, suggests to me that this comes to you over time, right? That's the mechanics of trust. Right? You trust it because you see that, well, it's never been wrong. But to be able to see that it's never been wrong takes time. Takes time to be convincing. And this trusting cause and effect can be very how to say, very freeing. So you are no longer praying for this and that, in fact. If you fully trust cause and effect, you're not asking, oh, please pray for me, please. Again, asking others to pray for you, there are skillful reasons to do that. But if you naturally come to a point of understanding that everything is happening based on cause and effect, then you do not ask people to pray in the way of hoping that it can subvert cause and effect. Yeah. See, often, right? Often our notions of like, please pray for me, is actually, please subvert cause and effect. Or please help me to subvert the playing out of cause and effect. Please help me, like it's sort of like, you just sped through the speed gun, and you know that you'll be stopped in the beginning, and you're now trying desperately to think, how can I turn on the other side of the highway? Can someone please open the road for me to escape? Often that's how we ask people to pray for us, Can I be airlifted from this, Or can they magically not see that that is registered, and whenever I get to the front, they say, just keep going, Like we're asking them, we're asking for, contravening cause and effect. So that's not a skillful way of please pray for me. It's a skillful way of please pray for me if you understand that, this is learning how to rely on others, to be vulnerable, as we would say, and giving also others an opportunity to develop compassion and consideration, and to think about others, to pray for others. So we have prayers for sure. But our prayers cannot be done as a way to cheat the system, to subvert the workings. So trusting has that deeper sense also of like, whatever happiness or suffering that is going to ripen in the next moment. First, I need to understand it's not a mistake, and accept it's not a mistake. So that's trusting faith. But that's not the end of it, okay? Later, more and more, you'll see how there are ways to transform this negative experience of suffering that arises due to our causes. But we need not remain there to suffer. There's no like good like things in suffering. So neither does the Buddha says, oh, just suffer through it, and then move on. That's not quite the answer either. But the answer is somewhere in between. Can you see that the suffering that you're experiencing now, or at least trust that the suffering that you're experiencing now is a ripening of a negative karma, and therefore in that context, in that understanding, you have a little bit more tolerance for the suffering, and you say, well, of course, this is not without rhyme or reason. I'm not just an innocent bystander. That I'm experiencing this suffering means I have the basis, I have the cause to experience this. But it doesn't stop there. The other teachings will help us dilute this pain that we are experiencing now. But you should not try to dilute it with the wrong understanding. Then you can never gain enough clear understanding to cut the very cause of suffering. In other words, it's also multifaceted, Dharma practice is not just a single thing that you do and you do it, under all circumstances at all times, and then you'll be fine. You'll be, everything will be great now. Unfortunately, I think it is true that a lot of ways in which, quote unquote, secular dharma or things along those lines sometimes give the impression that that's all, right? That's all that I need to do. So I'm reading this one. Started reading this one book, but anyway, they quote, this is a helpful one from Tanisaru Bhikkhu, representing a more traditional view of Buddhist practice. So he says, and he's commenting, he's critiquing contemporary Vipassana practice. The idea of creating meditations retreats, retreat centers, came basically in the late 19th and early 20th century, the same time when the assembly line was invented, breaking jobs down into little tiny parts that you do repetitively. This approach to physical work was efficient and effective, so it became the model for a lot of meditation retreats and for the methods taught on those retreats. You take one method and you just apply it again and again and again. But a lot gets left out in that approach. It is like exercising only one muscle in your body so that the muscle gets strengthened all out of proportion to the rest of your body, and that can't be healthy. It is better to think of meditation as a training for the whole mind, as exercise for the whole mind. You have to train the whole mind in all the virtues of maturity and heedfulness. In other words, you need to develop the ability to anticipate dangers, particularly dangers in your own behavior, and to figure out what you can do to prevent them. So Dharma practice, it's also not just like master this, and everything will be fixed. Meditation is also not just the mind not moving. Oh, everything's good now. It's multifaceted. You're working on different things, from different directions. And then learning to develop a more holistic and different parts of the practice provide different elements to constitute this whole holistic approach to practice. That's why, in a way, I think it is true that it is also not so easy to fully experience the benefit of the Buddha Dharma in all the, in all its like power, so to say. Because most of us only take this, and that. And to take the whole, I'm also not saying, forcing yourself to do and to believe in the whole package. Whole here means, and the journey to developing this wholeness is a journey, not a sprint. Yeah, but something to be cultivated over time. Reinforced by ritual, reinforced by philosophy, reinforced by actions, reinforced by mythology, all of that, while understanding that no single piece, is the it, but the whole picture is the it. Do it. Not enough, if it's just one Sunday a week. Not enough, even 1 hour a week. Or 1 hour a day, was what I was going to say. And for 7 days a week. Not enough. But, okay, don't fear. Don't think, you mean I need 4 hours a day? How can I carve out 4 hours a day? No, it means kind of find ways to skillfully weave them all together. At the same time, those of you who have listened to some of my teachings would also know that in other contexts, I tell people, don't mix it up too much. Keep it a little separate. So, okay, there's also some skill to develop there. In our too eagerness to make Dharma everything, every part of my life. The problem with that is not so much that that's not the right thing to do. The problem with that is not yet knowing what actually is Dharma and what is not. When you say, oh, I'm going to make Dharma my whole life, then mostly what you're making is, your whole life, huh? Using your life to interpret the Dharma, and in that way, distort what the Dharma is. Yeah, so also need to know, kind of intellectually, We start there, but those are important starting point to intellectually engage Dharma, the ideas, the teachings, the categories, the vocabulary that we find in Dharma. The more clearly we understand them, even just intellectually, then they can serve as reliable roadmaps. But then when you're on the journey, you also know, map is a representation of the reality. The map cannot tell you everything. But it would be foolish to go on this journey without relying on reliable maps. So the more Dharma potlucks you can go to, Dharma cleaning you can go to, Dharma movies you can go to, can help. Dharma brunch that you're going to can help. Because it's so easy to get carried away by other things, My Democratic Party meeting, my knitting meeting, my, and then thinking, oh, that's all Dharma practice. How? Oh, because it's all Dharma practice. Also not useful, It can be Dharma practice, but it's not default. If it was default Dharma practice, we would all be Buddhas by now because we've been busy doing all sorts of things, right? If everything is Dharma practice, then we are all, realized Buddhas now because we've been doing everything for a long, long time. But not yet. So continue to read. Next Sunday, unfortunately, I won't be able to meet with you guys. I will be just arriving, I think, in Cusco, Peru at this time next Sunday. And then I'll be on the road for the next couple of months. So continue to read this. And if you continue to meet over this text, have discussions, and I think your discussions can be better grounded if you also, at least one of you or two of you, maybe you all can divvy up this work, also go consult the words, the jewel ornament of liberation, because they are structurally rather similar. You just have to look around a little bit. They're not identical like the sections, not exactly organized the same way, but general areas, they are in the same way, including, and if you want something maybe easier to read and less dense, that will help inform the sections that we're covering, is the text called Words of My Perfect Teacher. Words of My Perfect Teacher is a set of transcripts that someone collected of his teacher teaching Whereas this text and jewel ornament were texts that were composed as treatises. Yeah? Treatises were meant for teachers to use as a basis for teaching students. In fact, the set of teachings called published under this title, Words of My Perfect Teacher, right? They are actually teachings on something like this text, but that was never provided or emphasized in the Words of My Perfect Teacher. Yeah, so then in the Words of My Perfect Teacher, you have in those transcripts, the Lama telling stories to illustrate points, just like in a very limited and far from admirable way. What I'm trying to do, bring context, bring stories, bring examples to unpack what is very dense here. Words of My Perfect Teacher is basically the words of Patur Rinpoche commenting on the Longchen Nyingtik Ngondro. And so the Longchen Nyingtik Ngondro root text is not in there in an explicit way, but he has in his hands the Longchen Nyingtik Ngondro. And he's expanding that. I mean, if you don't know all this vocabulary that I just used, don't worry about it. But I know there's at least one or two that's hearing now. You need to hear this, and it's helpful for you to hear this. What Words of My Perfect Teacher, how it is structured. It's a commentary. It's Patur Rinpoche's commentary on the Longchen Nyingtik Ngondro. And under the Longchen Nyingtik Ngondro, that begins with the four thoughts that turn the mind, is most of what we will be covering in the next few chapters in this particular book. Good?
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Safe travels.
Yeah, thank you. We need that. The countries that we're going to politically kind of shaky,
Yes.
but no real threat at this point. Everywhere is shaky these days. So anyway, thank you, and see you all whenever that is.
see you when you return.
Yeah, bye.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, bye. Ta ta.